tired of feeling I'm high on believing that you're in love with me. All the good love.
What a journey. Some of the funny things on a campaign is, what was it, Zach, about 4 o'clock, and we had to come up with a entry song. I said an entry song. So we're listening to Nigel and Hammer, and this song comes on. I said, that's going to be it. I always did like that song. You know, this whole thing started roughly a year ago. And before you enter on a journey like this, you want to make sure that you've got it all mapped out. And I started making phone calls across the state. The 3 years I spent in the state legislature, made a lot of friends. And this was going to take a lot of time, a lot of resources, and wanted to make sure there was a strong foundation to do it. And got a good reading, but all along, I sensed that people thought it just could not be done, because when you tackle something of this size in the normal format is, you know, not what I was pursuing, I think there was just a lot of doubt. So, you know, when I told Maureen that I was actually doing this, and many friends in Jasper, Indiana, they'd followed up with, do you need to have your head examined? I said, well, maybe I do. But it really made sense that the pathway of getting folks that have made their career in the private sector, maybe that's the kind of new dynamic we need in Washington. So, when you invest a year of your life, you've got to thank some people. And this lady right here. My family, Jeff and Britt and Jason and Kristen. And this gal right here. Yeah. 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 I'll tell you a few more stories when I'm down there, not up here. And that's my daughter, Kristen. So much thanks to all of you. And I know you wondered how this was going to end up. And also, part of building something in the real world, you've got competition. And it was always interesting, and I built my company on the idea that you compete hard. I mean, you get out there and dig every day, but you also find a way to kind of get along with competition. And sometimes that sounds like a contradiction, but it's not the case. I actually built my company by competing with many people and then eventually doing business with them. Some of the companies that we acquired, and it was a neat dynamic because in this, when all of us were competing, Todd Rokita, Luke Messer, others in the race early, my good friend Terry Henderson, who he and Beth have been helping me from way back, and that means a lot. That tells me that there's a certain respect. And when it comes to the Luke Messer and Todd Rokita, it was a difficult decision for many because we were all good conservatives. And sometimes it gets a little difficult to differentiate. And in the process of doing it, it gets a little, you know, it can get intense, it can get harsh. But I hope they will join me just like I would with them. Yes, because now our common goal all along was to retire Joe Donnelly. And the reason we need to retire Joe Donnelly One of the inspirations for me to do this, where I saw it could be done, was when a guy named Donald Trump came along way back in 2016. And I always tell the story, we all wondered how that was going to work out. And when I was driving around the rural counties in southern Indiana, and this was way before there were any political signs out, and I see Trump signs showing up in yards. And when I knew they had to buy these signs because they were that into something being different, that told me that this is something different. And when you watch that whole journey, when he was up against a slate of, 15 or 16 competitors and cleared the field, that's a deep message. And it's a message that says we do need something different. He was a disruptor, shaking the system, and it's playing out in front of us. I really believe if you get 10 to 12 of us in the Senate that have lived your life, first of all, in the trenches of conservatism, not through the lens of a politician, yes, I think that's a key difference. You will actually start to see things change. So, yeah. And I really think this race came down to that simple deduction that if you were happy with business as usual, then we keep going down the road of where we've been going. You get guys like me, Ron Johnson, David Perdue, others there, and we get enough of us there, I think we'll actually start to solve some of these issues that have been vexing politicians for a long time. So let's look at the competition ahead of us. Joe Donnelly, I mean, he's a guy that I think got into office kind of on a fluke in the first place. Yeah. And his record lines up with Pelosi and Schumer across the board. And he's managed to disguise himself from, I think, what real Hoosier values are about. Hoosiers do not look to government first to solve problems. Yeah. And Hoosiers, just like businesses, just like families, just like local governments, and just like our state government, we live within our means, and we still accomplish great things. That's the difference. And Joe Donnelly is going to have a tough time, even though he has kind of gotten along with certain sectors of Indiana's economy. I think his record is going to be flushed out, and it's all of our job to do it, and I think that's what's going to carry me to victory. Yeah. All of us in this room believe that free enterprise and hard work and all the values that are important to us in the long run are what is most important. And I think that Joe Donnelly voted against tax reform. And if there was one thing for a guy that's owned a small business, my wife, her only job has been a small business in our downtown square, a half block off of it, for 40 years. She'll celebrate her 40th year in business. And when we moved back to Jasper, of course, all of us went to Wabash College. I got an MBA at Harvard Business School, and very unusual back in the late 70s to move back to your hometown. A lot of people thought, what was wrong? Well, there wasn't anything wrong. We saw the light when we were in Boston. We wanted to raise a family and wanted to do our own thing, and it worked out. It's the American dream. And I know that Joe Donnelly will try to come at me, and I can't wait to take the record of what we've done in our hometown, the time I've spent in the State House, and get those values and those ideas out there. I mean, government is not the solution. And we finally got tax reform through, and I think it's incumbent upon all enterprisers, all of us in business, to show with the fruits of our labor and the fact that we've got more jingle in our pocket, we've got to prove to people across the country that free enterprise works. And we've run our business that way, and I think all enterprisers across the country, if we're going to ever shift this kind of leaning towards government to solve your problems, we need to come up with the ideas to not only repeal, but to replace Obamacare. Remember, Joe Donnelly voted for Obamacare. He voted against tax reform. His record is going to be easy to flush out. And I intend to do that and be the individual that makes the case not only for what we believe in, but also to send Joe Donnelly to an early retirement. So. You know, the journey was long. Like I say, I started this almost a year ago. And I've been driving around a 2008 vehicle, and I put so many miles on it, I got to carry a quart of oil with me. And I'm hoping I don't have to use it, but may have to. And I intend to work that hard. And I think we've got a great message. And again, I want to thank my family. The hardest part is ahead of us. And yeah, hon, that's true. And I want to also, again, ask all of us to come together, because all along, each one of us in this race said that we would support the other one, and I welcome them to come on board. We need to get everybody united in this common goal, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.